Greetings, children, and welcome to my chamber. My name is Rotherick Gastblood, and I'm your host of Tales from the Dark Chamber. This week, we have a great show for you. Tales to make your skin crawl. Each week, my chambermate and I read a scary tale that we found on the internet, or perhaps left under some corpse. Either way, we think you're going to like it, and we're just dying for you to hear it. So sit right back, light a candle, and let's have a ghoul evening. Nothing like a quiet, peaceful evening by the fire, eh, Woody?
Yeah, you can say that again.
Nothing like a quiet...
I didn't mean it literally, Rotherick.
Oh, Woody, I was just joking with you.
Master of puns and jokes today, aren't we, Rotherick?
Oh, I am quite funny, you know. Yes, indeed. Want to hear a joke?
Okay.
I believe you'll find this humorous.
Oh, good God, Rotherick, is that
humorous? You know, a bone pot in the arm. Oh, just pulling your leg, Woody, so to say. So who did the boy monster take to the Halloween dance?
Dunno.
Why, his beautiful ghoul friend. What did the grandfather ghoul say to his grandson?
Haven't a clue.
My grandson, you gruesome. How do you keep a ghoul from biting his nails out?
Remove his teeth?
No, but I like where you're going with that. No, replace the nails with screws. How many ghouls does it take to change a light bulb?
7.
7?
Yeah, 1 to change the light bulb and 6 to carry the coffin?
Wrong again. They don't need to.
Okay, enough with the puns. On to our story, or shall I say stories. Tonight, folks, we have a collection of short stories that Rotherick found on the internet. I think he found them in the same place he found the jokes.
Nevermore, Woody. Nevermore.
Anyhow, enjoy. The Expressionless. In June 1972, a woman appeared in Cedars-Sinai Hospital in nothing but a white, blood-covered gown. Now, this in itself should not be too surprising, as people often have accidents nearby and come to the nearest hospital for medical attention. But there were 2 things that caused people who saw her to vomit and flee in terror. The first thing being that she wasn't exactly human. She resembled something close to a mannequin, but had the dexterity and fluidity of a normal human being. Her face was flawless as a mannequin's, devoid of eyebrows and smeared in makeup. There was a kitten clamped in her jaws so unnaturally tight that no teeth could be seen, and the blood was still squirting out all over her gown and onto the floor. She then pulled it out of her mouth and tossed it aside and collapsed. From the moment she stepped through the entrance to when she was taken to a hospital room and cleaned up before being prepped for sedation, she was completely calm, expressionless and motionless. The doctors thought it best to restrain her until the authorities could arrive, and she did not protest. They were unable to get any kind of response from her, and most of the staff members felt too uncomfortable to look directly at her for more than a few seconds. But the second the staff tried to sedate her, she fought back with extreme force. 2 members of the staff had to hold her down as her body rose up on the bed with the same blank expression. She turned her emotionless eyes toward the male doctor and did something unusual. She smiled. As she did, the female doctor screamed and let go out of shock. In the woman's mouth were not human teeth, but long, sharp spikes, too long for her mouth to close fully without causing any damage. The male doctor stared back at her for a moment before asking, "What the hell are you?" She cracked her neck down to her shoulder to observe him, still smiling. There was a long pause. The security had been alerted and could be heard coming down the hallway. As he heard them approach, she darted forward, sinking her teeth into the front of his throat, ripping out his jugular, and letting him fall to the floor, gasping for air as he choked on his own blood. She stood up and leaned over him, her face coming dangerously close to his, and as the life faded from his eyes, she leaned closer and whispered in his ear, "I am God." The doctor's eyes filled with fear as he watched her calmly walk away to greet the security men. His last ever sight would be watching her feast on them one by one. The female doctor who survived the incident named her the Expressionless. There was never a sight of her again. Instant messaging. It all started on the 14th night of March, the night of my parents' 20th wedding anniversary. It was a wonderful sunny day, if memory serves. Surprisingly warm for before the beginning of spring. The beautiful weather was perfect for the atmosphere of the day. Being married for 20 years is obviously a momentous occasion, so my parents had booked a table at our favorite Italian restaurant. Of course, this was a formal occasion, so I had my best suit on. It was 5:53 and I was just straightening my tie when my phone went off. I had received a message. That's strange, I thought. That never happens. I checked the message. It was from my mom. It was quite a jumble of numbers and letters, but through the vocabulary stew, I could make out a legible phrase. "Please help me." It should go without saying that this worried me greatly, so I immediately replied, "Are you okay?" Just as instantly, I got another text which read, "Oops, pocket text." I sighed with all the relief I had and continued to prepare myself. A few minutes later, I received yet another message, this time from my dad. I checked the text, and once again, it was a massive mixture of letters and numbers, with the phrase, "Please help me," concealed within it. Creepy though this was, my dad was always a joker, so I presumed he was just joking around, until I was sent another text message saying, "Oops, pocket text." Now this sparked panic. Pure, unmistakable panic. Exactly half a minute passed when I received the exact same message from my sister. This could not be coincidental. It just couldn't. In a state of sheer anxiety, I started to run to the restaurant. I made it about a quarter of the way there before I was stopped by a police officer. "Main road's closed," he said. "Huge car crash." This was the exact moment I realized just what had happened. I demanded to see the wreckage, a request I'm surprised was allowed. When I got there, it wasn't the remnants of the car that caught my eye, not the flames billowing out from the destroyed vehicle. No, I was horrified to see the lifeless corpses of my mother, father, and sister. I asked for the estimated time of their deaths. All three of them were killed instantly by the collision at 5:32. Kids in the Dark by Slime Beast. Growing up poor in the Deep South meant sharing a lot with my brother Ollie. Most often, we'd pass toys, clothes, and skin conditions between us. Up until he was 6, we even shared a bed. Neither of us was happy about that. It was my 10th birthday when that changed. I got one present that year, and it was a bed of my own. Ollie was jealous right away, and I could understand why. He had to keep that half-broken-down frame with the worn-out mattress. The one I'd gotten wasn't much better, but not being broken and worn was enough. Sleeping apart was a great feeling. It was freedom. No longer would I have to suffer the sudden and inexplicable kicks to the stomach. No longer would I wake up with Ollie's foot pressed into my neck like he'd stepped on Dracula the night before. At least, that's what I'd thought. Right away, right after I got the new bed, the shriek started. At first, I thought Ollie woke up in the middle of the night and screamed because he'd gotten scared. Then the sound echoed through the tiny room again, and I knew it wasn't a normal cry. The room was always black as pitch after sunset. The one window we had was pressed against a longleaf pine, and even the biggest, brightest moon cast no light inside. The shriek just about drove me crazy. Every night, probably about the same exact time, these sharp yelps would knock me right out of my dreams. It wasn't my mom or dad yelling either. I knew what that sounded like, believe me. Most worrying of all was the fact that I could never tell where it was coming from. It seemed completely random. One night it'd come from somewhere near the closet. The next night it'd shoot out from the corner of the ceiling. Any hope I'd have of having my own space would get dashed every time as Ollie would silently slip into the bed with me, shaking like crazy. He'd clasp onto me and wouldn't let go until it was almost daybreak. Most times I'd take his hands and tell him everything was going to be okay, that it'd be over by morning, but I was never really sure. Over time, the shriek started changing. At first, it was only by small degrees, but eventually it took on the primal hooting sound of a primate calling out its fierce warning. I had to clasp pillows to my ears just to keep from going deaf. Mom and Dad never believed me or Ollie, basically because one thing, whatever it was, refused to make a peep when they were in the room. Apparently, they couldn't even hear it through the walls, even though it was damn sure loud enough. The shriek just got worse and worse until I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. Me and Ollie were doing real bad in school, and we just had no energy at all. I could sleep more deeply with my head propped up and my eyes open in the middle of class than in my own room at night. Then, thankfully, we moved out of the house nearly a year later. I had contemplated all sorts of things, even a child's clumsy concept of suicide, to get away from the horrific nightly noise. There was no problem at the next house. It was a nice white cookie-cutter home on a dead-end street, and I welcomed the normalcy. What's more, when we moved in, there was a bunk bed waiting for me and Ollie. No more broken bed, no more second bed I ended up having to share anyway. The only problem was deciding who got the top bunk. I told Ollie I deserved it. After all, I had gotten a new bed way back, and he ruined it by climbing in every night. What? He shook his head. I never did that. I always wondered why that noise stopped the second I was sharing my bed. Now I had the answer. The Oneirophage. In the late 40s of the last century, after a decade of private research involving experiments with binaural beat brainwave frequencies, extrasensory cognition, and rare extracts from a South American vine, Dr. Thomas Resner perfected a technique whereby one could actually intrude into the psyche and see another's thoughts. Despite having exhaustively documenting his rigorous work, he could find no institution that would even offer to review it. Forced to sell his invention, he found by word of mouth among those who he procured narcotics a prospective buyer, the bête noire of an old New York family, Mr. John M. Dunn, a voyeuristic connoisseur of the supernatural and the obscene, who had squandered his idle youth in the great libraries of Paris, those catacombs of departed authors, rummaging around the hoards of the dusty and obsolete works, a literary ghoul who disturbed with profane fingers the charnel houses of decayed philosophies. He readily agreed with the doctor's asking price without haggling, delighted at the prospect of exploring such a bizarre novelty. Once adept at the operation of the apparatus, Dunn paid Resner off and under an assumed name rented a shabby house within the view of Sing Sing prison. In the timeless night, while the convicts fitfully slept, with the aid of a set of stolen blueprints and his new mind-reading device, he rated their memories cell by cell, at liberty to savor the forbidden thrill of the thefts, molestations, moonlit homicides, in secret without remorse or consequence. Within a month, the prisoners, telling each other about their nightmares from which they had all begun abruptly to awaken, discovered they shared striking similarities. First, processions of alligators and tortoises filed through a swamp crowded with faceless people and shrieking orchids. Next, a shadow man, at whom they looked directly but could never quite see, would watch them from utter silence from an empty house while invisible hands probe behind their eyes as they stand naked, legs locked in place, unable to run away. Their compared descriptions of the house were identical, including its location just outside the walls. By mutual agreement, it was planned that the first of them to receive parole or be released would search this house out to find if it really existed and investigate the source of their troubling dreams. A few days after being freed, their chosen spy was able to inform them with a smuggled message and code that not only was the house real, but he had broken into it at night and found a gaunt, mustached man in a silk smoking jacket seated bolt upright, head thrust back, both eyes gaping, mouth stuck open in a stiffened gasp, clenched hands gripping the arms of his chair in front of a scientific machine. A handwritten journal on the desk told the whole story of his adventures, prying unconstrained through their psyches, plundering the haunted memories of criminal after criminal, seeking ever more shameful and audacious experiences until finally he wrote, on July 7th, of his overwhelming desire to witness telepathically the next execution of the prison's notorious electric chair.
Well, folks, that's our story tonight. Rotherick and I hope you enjoyed it. We sure had a great time bringing it to you, and we really appreciate you listening. Tune in next week when we bring you another chilling tale from the dark chamber. And just a note, if you're an aspiring author and you want your story read here on Tales from the Dark Chamber, send us a note at talesfromthedarkchamber@gmail.com. If it creeps old Rotherick out enough, we'll air it. And subscribe to our podcast for notification of our next new episode, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tales from the Dark Chamber and follow us on Instagram or Twitter. If you want your story read for your own use, or you just want to have it, check out my website at woodygvoiceover.net. You can order there, or you can find me on Upwork as Woody G. And again, thank you for listening tonight.